Good morning and welcome to your creative journey. I'm Jane Turner and I will be with you for the next hour talking about all things creative. And I have my wonderful guest with me, Sam Williams from The Real
Review.
Show Real Review. I told you I would stuff that up, Sam.
That's right.
Anyway, keep an eye on this space because Sam is just launching his new business to help other people like he was 10 years ago.
Yeah, right about that, yeah.
Looking at how to bust into one of the toughest industries in the world. So buckle up. We're going to hear all about Sam's journey and so many great tips that he's actually putting into the book that he's writing at the moment, just to help young kids and others who just can envisage themselves doing some pretty cool stuff. Like Sam worked on the Lego movie, didn't you? You were one of the early days back in the games, the video games.
That's where I sort of began.
Right.
I began my career on LA Noire.
LA Noire, what a place to start.
Yeah. So
we'll get to how that happened.
Get to how that happened. But I sort of went from there I went from video games into movies. So I started on LA Noire, and then from there I went into things like Happy Feet 2, the Lego movie, pretty much all the Lego movies. Ninjago, Batman. So I'm all Legoed out.
You're Legoed out, but what an experience.
Yeah, and then a little bit of sort of live action as well. So Angelina Jolie's Unbroken was another one.
Wow.
But then most recently was Maya the Bee 2, which is actually coming out. It's coming out next year, I think. So I'm looking out for that one.
Yeah, very cool. And now you started off something like the Noir.
LA Noire, yeah.
How did it happen, Sam? How did you make this happen? Nothing just happened.
Yeah, that was a funny story. So I'd never worked in anything before. So I hadn't worked in retail. I hadn't really done anything. So I kind of didn't have a lot of sort of life experience at that point. But what I was studying in was I studied an advanced diploma of screen for 2 years at TAFE in Adelaide. And throughout that time, it was really good because we got a chance to, work on our own. We made our own sort of game and put that out there, and then we saw that sort of get featured on, UK gaming magazines and stuff. And we were just we were kids, and we were just like, oh, that's cool. I didn't expect that to happen at all. That got sort of people noticing that and everything, and then from that we could actually make our show reels and our portfolios and everything.
Okay. Yes, you leveraged, as they say.
Leveraged, yeah. So by the end of the year, we sort of had all this content that we'd worked on, and we were like, okay, so I guess now's the time to send it out there and see if we get any bites from companies. And the first company I sent it to was Team Bondi in Sydney, and I was living in Adelaide at the time, and I just sort of thought, oh yeah, Rockstar Games.
That's right. Try the big smoke.
Exactly. I was like, what are they going to want from me? But then got a phone call back, sort of saying, oh yeah, we saw your show reel and we really enjoyed it. Would you like to sit like an online test? It was like a 3D modelling test.
All right.
And so I sort of said, oh yeah, sure, I'll do this test, and went for about 4 hours, sent it through, wasn't happy with anything I did, but they got back to me and they said, oh, we'd love to fly you up for an interview.
And you're how old at this age?
I was 19.
Stage, I should say.
I was 19.
You're being flown up to Sydney by a company that people would have killed to work in.
Yeah.
And it was not too shabby.
Yeah, well, it was really funny as well because I'd never been on a plane at that point.
Oh, Sam! Wow.
So I was just sort of like, it's funny. A couple of my mates also were getting flown over for the interview, who also hadn't been on planes, and we're sort of sitting on this plane, about to be in this interview.
Oh man!
Kind of,
so we've got
lots of new experiences.
Green blokes. Getting off the plane, working their way to. Was it literally in Bondi?
No, that was the funny thing. I think. I could be wrong on this, I'm sure someone will point it out to me, but I think the name Team Bondi actually came from the fact that a lot of the founders were they lived in Bondi at the time.
Oh, I see.
So I think that's where the name came from. Yeah, so it was actually in Ultimo. That's where the office was.
Okay, well, just let me reassure everybody listening and watching us on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, we are in Bondi. I can see the water.
It's great,
No swell. The people on their surfboards are just bobbing around.
Yeah.
But we're really here.
It's funny, I keep sort of going to look at the camera and then I'm like, oh, but look at the beautiful, look at the beautiful ocean.
So I want to backtrack a bit though, Sam, because you sort of skimmed over this. You did a 2-year diploma.
Mm-hmm.
You then wound up employed, no gap by the sound of it.
Yeah, from college to employment there was, a month or two.
So there's something going on here though. What do you put it down to? It wasn't luck, and don't say it was. I'm picking up an attitude in you that I think would have been helpful. What would you have put it down to, do you think?
I think
it's got to be some hard work as well.
It's hard work, and it's I'm trying to think of this quote that I've actually written in my book, and it was something about, luck is when preparation meets.
Oh yes.
You know the one? Where it's sort of like, you can't say luck, but it's, it's a bit of right place, right time sort of thing.
You create the conditions for luck to arrive.
Exactly.
That way.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, keep going.
Yeah, so the other thing I was going to say was, throughout that 2 years, it was like a real sort of obsession with 3D modelling and 3D animation and that sort of thing. It was, 4 hours sleep a night, and just kind of real sort of unhealthy obsession with. But I think that was because a lot of it was kind of unknown, like it was just unknown territory. So it's just like, I'll just sort of do the work and then
do the work.
Because if you do the work, then I mean, you make it, or you say that you did the work. It's sort of
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Actually, I'll share an experience that I had this week. I went and saw Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V. I'm never that comfortable with the way I am unable to pronounce his surname, but Gary V. I think he just default to that anyway to make it easier for people like me. But his whole shtick, and if you don't know him, looking him up on YouTube, he's an edgy as all hell New Yorker, and just says it like it is, basically. And he has so much content on social media, and this is his expertise. And he's just launched a book this year called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And that is just the simplification of the message. It's another thing that came out of him, a simplification of the message, but do the effing work. And he just puts the F word in more senses, more times than I think I could ever do. But man, does he get the message through. And you could be not connected with him for the reason of the kind of the scatter gun and it's coming at you. But man, he comes from the heart. And that's what seeing him in person did for me. I got that. That's what he is driving this message home. It's the work and it's patience. And you've exemplified both, Sam. But it is that. It's work and it's patience. And it's getting out of
perseverance.
Getting out of excuse land. And he said to us in the room, look, you've all now created for yourself, by being in the room, you've created a competitive advantage. What breaks my heart, and that wasn't his words, but I often use these words, what breaks my heart is seeing people just leave the competitive advantage behind when they walk out the door. Do you know? And this is just by way of pushing home the fact that somebody could hear your story and think, wow, that guy had it so easy. Yes, things fell into place, but you had a lot to do with that, and hard work had a lot to do with that.
And still going, I guess. Still in my early days. But that's kind of.
And what about the book then? Talk a little about this and why, and what's in there and who's it for.
Well, I guess as hard as I worked, sort of as time goes on, I sort of realise hard work is part of it, but also working smart is part of it. But I just kind of feel like there's a lot of information not out there,
Yes.
or there is information put out there, but it's not from people that have, worked in the industry, or perhaps, you get the odd blog or so that sort of covers it very briefly, but not really sort of comprehensively. So I put together this business called Showreel Review.
Yep.
And for those who don't know what a showreel is, it's basically a reel of movies you've worked in, games you've worked in, scenes. Basically, a visual sort of representation of what your skills and what your qualities are and that sort of thing.
Right, it's like a CV on steroids, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So it accompanies your CV. So basically, an employer can look at you and be like, oh, this person has skills for the job, for the position.
Yeah.
And proof. Yeah. So my initial thought was, why don't I sort of create sort of like a consulting service,
very good idea.
where people who are coming from education into employment. There's a lot of people who have a much larger gap between those things than I did. So it was.
That's nicely put, Sam.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of bridging that niche. Not to say everything needs to be created, but it's sort of in this day and age where it's so accessible for me to put information out there. And
absolutely. And the great thing about your book as well is that my understanding of this industry, which isn't that great, is that it's just listening to you now as well, there's a disparate amount of very useful content and then a lot of not so useful content. So if you were to be doing what you did initially, all those days where you managed to squeeze in 4 hours sleep.
Yeah, maybe I could have got 6 hours.
Well, maybe you could have. Yeah. Maybe you could have been on holidays and just working a couple hours a week.
Exactly.
We all sort of dream about. But the point is, you're going to be packaging this up in the one book.
Yes.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I reckon too, you should approach the colleges.
That's
be
actually
there. Why don't those kids have this information? Well, they can get it by buying your book. But there's the whole other aspect.
Coming soon, by the way.
Coming very soon. That's right. Watch the website. That's the best thing.
www.showreelreview.com.
Yep.
If you go to that website, you can sign up for updates, and you can even contact me if you've got any questions or anything you'd like to add. But that's
beautiful.
So basically what I was finding was lots of information on the internet and stuff, usually in sort of bits and pieces and not in a cohesive book, about just sort of the career journey, it's and also not really verified as far as getting other people's outlooks on things. It's always, here's someone from such and such, he thinks this.
Yes.
Whereas I really wanted to sort of amalgamate a whole lot of opinions on things. So one of the things I did was sort of host surveys about what fellow professionals' education was, and sort of got an experience pool of around 270 years, just to sort of create, as lame as it sounds, but pie charts about are people going to TAFE? Are people going to university? Are people going to sort of private colleges? And what that kind of illustrated to me was you can kind of come from any background.
Oh, yes.
Everyone's, I've got the breakdown here, but it's sort of like, well, looking at that, there's people that have only just finished high school that ended up in the industry. There are people that, have done full degrees and master's degrees, and there are people who have done bachelor degrees and diplomas like myself. So just sort of using sort of a bit of like an analysis on, just so it's not me speaking, it's a whole lot of people sort of speaking. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what you've done as well, and one of the things that I use to help people unpack their content out of their books, and I must say, Sam, you weren't one of my clients. Don't be talking about this too much. You just went away and wrote a book, whereas I help people who have difficulty getting the content out of their head and onto the page.
Yes, yeah.
This is one of the main barriers people have. I help them with, I've identified 5 main barriers, but one of the big ones is, how do I get the content out of my head and onto the page? And the other part of that question then should be, and how do I get that to land with as many of my potential readers as possible?
Yeah.
And what you've done by, you've sort of downplayed a little bit the fact that you did the work to do the survey, to get the statistics. Some of the people who are going to be reading your book need to know that kind of material is in there.
Yeah.
So we've got, and I use Bernice Murphy's strategy, for want of a better word. She has quite a sophisticated system called the format system, which is used as a profiling tool in leadership development and what have you.
Oh, right.
But if you take the guts out of that, it's about that we have a particular bias toward information delivered in a particular way.
Right.
We might call it a learning style.
Certainly.
And you've got your why learners who are going to want to pick up your book, and they're reading the back cover or they're looking at the contents, and they're going to be unconsciously asking this question: why do I need to know this information? Or what's in it for me? Yeah. So you want to be languaging parts of the content in such a way that it's, I share this information with you because, or by learning this, you will be able to do X, Y, and Z. You're giving a reason.
Exactly, yeah.
What your pie charts do is
bit of validation, isn't it?
What learners want to know, but what specifically am I going to get here?
Yeah.
And the what of it is they're going to get statistics that will show them a breakdown of the kind of people entering the arena. So,
absolutely, yeah.
I've given probably people a confusing view of what the 4 learning styles are and how you would apply them to unpacking your content. But I think unconsciously you've strategically done something really, really helpful in terms of the penetration of your book. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think too. I'm always the sort of person who questions why.
You're a
why
learner.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think that way, or why is your opinion this, or drive some people mad? But
and why does it matter?
And why does it matter? And so, not to say, not trying to say, this is science. This is how it's going. This is how it's going to be. But I think it sort of adds weight and a bit of sort of validation to someone just saying, and then you do this, and then you do it, and whereas if you speak to a wide range of people, you can kind of interpolate trends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trends. Success is built on looking at what's gone before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And scrutinising what's gone before with the why. Why has that happened? How have they made it happen?
Yeah.
And this is that you're sharing the how from your point of view as well. How you made this happen.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Valuable content. Definitely valuable.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I sort of thought when creating it was, when I was searching for similar examples, I couldn't really find any, because most of them are sort of talking about, the technical aspects of, how do you create animation, sort of trying to be an educational platform as opposed to almost like a coaching, career coaching kind of platform rather, because, I wasn't going to pretend that I could give people a full education or anything like that, or, there are so many great tutorials on how to create a 3D model or animate or that sort of thing. But what I realised was missing was the whole kind of marketing yourself and what sort of steps you can take to, your dream job's here, how do you get there? A lot of people, if they don't initially get that dream job, they're kind of stumped. They're just like, I'll give up, it's not worth it anymore,
Yes.
Where in the book I sort of touch upon, okay, so this is your dream job, they're looking for this, you can go off in this direction and get what they're looking for, and then come back,
Perfect.
direct yourself back that way.
Perfect,
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah.
Now I want to take you back though to school. I want to know more. I think this is the
Right.
me. I want to know more about what got you to that place where you could use a 2-hour, a 2-hour, we wish, a 2-year course and just step into an industry like that. I'm still curious. Curious. So what was school like for you, Sam?
So school was actually, one example I thought of, because I was watching the show a few weeks ago and you had a guest on who spoke about education kind of stifling creativity and often, you know, shuffling people into boxes and that kind of thing. What I actually found, I don't disagree with that opinion actually, but what I found for me was I actually had a really fortunate experience where my parents were, you know, very much like, you know, you can, oh, that's what you're into, then that's what you can pursue. But then also as far as schooling, the school I went to had all the sort of subjects that sort of put me in the right direction. So, you know, digital multimedia and the arts and design and all those sorts of things. And basically from I think it was year 9 into sort of year 10, I could sort of decide which subjects I didn't need anymore. You know, I was never going to be a mathematician or a scientist or, you know, that sort of thing. So so I just sort of had, you know, music technology, digital multimedia, art, design, you know, it was just all what the academics was sort of, oh, you did all the fun subjects. Well, you know. So
what? So you did,
So I did it, and I knew that with I knew I was doing all subjects that didn't have exams, and I knew.
Oh, I see the strategy. Right.
But I also knew that I was probably not going to, you know, from doing that, not going to get a score that, you know, allowed me into the traditional university sort of sector and that kind of thing.
The dreaded score.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like, oh, well, I'll just do what I'm going to be good at. And then I just sort of kept following that. And then
you kind of followed a dream.
Yeah. So then I went into TAFE, and it was you know, an advanced diploma in screen, but focusing on video games. And I was like, cool, I'll make video games for a living.
Fantastic.
And the
rest is history. Yes. Well, so that's the thing, isn't it? That not everybody's experience is the same, and kids who've come through and they've done science and they've done maths and it hasn't resonated for them. Do you know how easy or hard it is these days to get into a course like the one that you did? Do they still exist? Does TAFE, because TAFE, this is an Australian institution, a valued Australian institution that's gone through a lot of iterations over the last, you know, decade or so.
Yeah.
Are they still in a position to offer courses like that?
Yeah, actually, the one part I want to go into was, I think it's actually getting better as far as basically with demand, you know, how big an industry games and video and film are and stuff like that. I've actually seen there's a huge influx of more students and trying to sort of get into it, but the education is just getting more relevant to the positions, and more niche sort of courses are coming out for, you know, it's not just you're making games, it's you're making, you know, the user interface of games, or you're working on the game mechanics, the game design, or it's not just film, but you're working on purely you know, animation for film, or you know, there are still the all-encompassing courses, but there are also all these sort of the niches.
And there's all the virtual reality
stuff,
and the potential here for not only working on films and games and the cooler stuff, not that this isn't cool, but in the corporate world, those companies who need to present an edgier and you know, just a contemporary image of themselves, the content that they'll be needing on their websites and you know.
Exactly,
oh God, it's huge actually, the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, the other thing I'm seeing, which I think is really great, is companies kind of getting into the you know, big film studios and stuff, pairing with educational company, with sort of educational institutes like the TAFE, like the uni. You know, for example, one of the companies I've worked a lot of years at was Animal Logic. And they've actually done a pairing.
Even I've heard of them.
Yeah, they've done a pairing with UTS. So you can go to an Animal Logic UTS course,
okay.
which is just brilliant because it's got, you know, employees from Animal Logic and,
oh my God,
you know, so it's you're
that's
getting
genius.
one-on-one, and you're getting, you know, the industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. UTS, for people who aren't Sydney people, is University of Technology, Sydney.
Yeah.
A lot of the journalists that you all see writing and on the screen have been trained in UTS, and now a lot of it's a lot broader than it used to be back in my day.
Yeah, yeah, and even, you know, when I was back in Adelaide a few months ago, and I was going and sort of visiting my old class and my old teachers and everything, they've sort of changed their curriculum to be much more sort of streamlined as well. So,
okay.
yeah, I think it's everything's coming up
Great.
well these
Okay.
days. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you were starting out again now, knowing what you do know,
Right.
what would you do? How would you play your cards?
That's a good question. I mean, I probably wouldn't have changed my process as far as what I applied for and what my moves were. Trying to fill with this service.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the sense where it's like, this worked for me, but I understand that that's not necessarily commonplace, and not due to people not having the skills. Or,
That's right. Yeah, it's
you know,
not a lack of talent.
Exactly. And, you know, so much is who you know and right place, right time and everything.
Yeah.
But I just think it's devastating to see people that don't end up doing what they want to do.
Oh,
It's super devastating.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just figured if this venture sort of helps anyone
Indeed.
on those sorts of paths, then,
Yes.
I mean, that's what more could you ask for, really?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And when can we expect the book?
Oh, that's a good question. I keep adding to it.
As you do.
Yeah,
as you do.
So I sort of.
What are you writing about at the moment specifically?
I kind of actually I've got a few loose ends sort of chapters that I'm trying to fill in, but as time goes on and I sort of let it sit, I keep coming up with more ideas. You know, more sort of you know, things I haven't touched upon much is sort of the social media aspect and YouTube and that sort of stuff, which I really want to get into because I think it would be silly to miss that part. And then just a bit more further proofreading from peers and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'd love to sort of go around to colleges and schools and sort of do seminars and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now you did a bit of that already.
Yes, mostly just within my own sort of, you know, went back to my old course and sort of spoke to them, which was great. Got some sort of feedback, which is fantastic.
What age? You spoke to some of the kids?
Yeah, spoke to the students.
What age were they?
So actually, funnily enough, my brother is doing the same course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's doing the same course, and he's got, you know, some of my old lecturers from Tea Tree Gully TAFE. And
Tea Tree Gully TAFE.
Tea Tree Gully TAFE in Adelaide.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds what a wonderful name for a TAFE.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, what age is my brother again? Adam, what age are you? He must be 20 or so
20?
now.
Okay.
I think I got that wrong, but
All right.
21 maybe. I'm not sure.
And how did it feel to you? I suppose you're looking. It's the view from the other side. How did it feel? What's the mood? What was the mood like? Is there optimism? Is there a sense of?
There was optimism. I think the great thing that course also sort of teaches you is realism, as in, you know,
Okay, it's not a
both,
bad thing.
Yeah,
It's not a
both
bad
optimism, but also both, like, you realise this is competitive, right? Like you know, this is. You know, are you going to do the work now, or are you going to miss out on opportunities?
Exactly.
You know, that sort of thing.
It's that sort of sorting the men from the boys in a
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
though, isn't it? Who's up for it?
But the community is really good as well, you know.
Yes.
And it particularly was when I was there, and I also saw it when I went back recently, that yes, you've got teams of people that are trying to create their own little projects, but they're all sort of interchanging, helping one another, and
Okay.
you know, it's you know, oh, I don't know how to do this, but you know, so and so over there knows how to do this, and so they'll come over and they'll help. So it's, when I say competitive, I also mean as far as a whole, as far as how many people are applying for positions.
Yes,
Not so
yes.
much like, oh, you're going to go to a TAFE course and everyone's, you know, it's survival of the fittest. You know, it is a real community in those sorts of courses, I find, with a bit of friendly competition.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, you've certainly got a soft landing into the workforce in terms of, yes, getting a job that suited you perfectly in terms of where you were at the time, but the fact that you had friends who came down also at the same time. So you didn't have to come to Sydney by yourself. You didn't have to have your first flight on a plane by yourself. You didn't have to walk in. So they all got the job, I understand.
Yeah, I had a few friends that got the job. Yeah.
And where are they now?
They are.
The journeys are interesting. This is great stuff to know.
It's funny. All our journeys have been pretty different.
Okay.
You know, I've got a friend living with me, well, not living with me, but a friend who lives with me in Sydney, and his journey's kind of similar. We often sort of chase each other around companies around Sydney. You know, I'll get a job at Animal Logic, and then I'll see him there again, and that kind of thing. And then I've got another mate in Adelaide who is working on really popular iPhone games that just sell like hotcakes and that sort of thing.
What does a day in the life look like for someone doing that? I should ask you a day in the life of you when you were working on the Lego movie. Maybe I should do that, and you probably don't know what a day in the life of your friend working on those games on the phones, but what's a day in the life look like?
Day in the life. Well, there's so many different departments you can work in on these projects, and for example, things like Happy Feet 2 and the Lego movie and stuff. You end up with sort of 600 plus people working on these productions, and I've been in departments that have 5 people or so out of that many people. You can imagine how many departments there are.
Yes. What specifically are you producing?
So what my part is. So most recently on Maya the B2, I worked in final layout and stereo. So basically, in layman's terms, laywoman's terms, layout is basically the first steps in sort of portraying what's happening in each scene. So that's kind of, when I say first steps, you've obviously got the storyboard and the script and everything. But layout is putting the 3D elements together and choosing the sort of appropriate camera lengths and doing camera animation. So it's sort of it's a conversation between character 1 and character 2, very sort of rough posing and animation on them.
Okay.
We want a 50mm lens on that, right? So, and then final layout sort of, once you've done that and it goes to animation and it gets polished and you get much more emotion out of the scene, we go back in and we say, actually, a 50mm might have been slightly too long for this scene or too short, and we go and adjust it. Or, the animation was here, but then the animators sort of moved it over here, so we adjust the camera and
oh my God!
Put in,
the actual detail.
Yes,
It's mind-boggling, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone who sits back and watches a movie like that, you've got no idea.
Yeah, and we do stuff as well, like set dressing, where we'll say, "Oh, look, really nice to have a sort of tree over there," so we'll just place a tree there, or do some, just kind of make the scene feel better,
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what sort of explains layout and final layout. And stereo is sort of relatively new element in the scheme of things, I guess, and that's the actual 3D effect. When you put the glasses on in the cinema.
Okay.
So it's deciding how deep or how shallow a scene needs to be.
Okay.
So to convey a message, whether you're going to sort of push stuff forward beyond the screen or back into the screen.
All these a million decisions.
10
million decisions go behind one scene.
Yeah, so you normally have a lead, and then you've got the director, and you've got multiple people that sort of set the boundaries, and then you sort of go in and you sort of tweak it, and then they say, I really liked what you did here, or don't like what you did here.
Okay.
So that's been my position quite a few times.
And what are you called when you do that? You're called layout something?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So it's sort of you're a layout artist or you're a final layout artist, but encompassing that is often these days on smaller productions the stereo element or set dressing and that sort of stuff as well.
Okay. So a bit kind of multi-skilled.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
What was that word that we were talking about?
Oh, multi-potentialite.
That's the one. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm hearing that more. It's like when you see a pregnant woman, everyone looks you're seeing pregnant women everywhere then.
When you go to buy a car and then you see...
multi-potentialites all over the place.
Yeah.
So tell me about how, from a 1 to 10, how much of a multi-potentialite
Oh, jeez. let's give it a 7.
A
Let's chuck a
7,
7
'cause
down.
there's some protein powder or something in your story, isn't there? Tell us about
Oh yeah, so another thing I thought I'd touch on was, I was just thinking sort of about how Showreel Review came about,
All right, yes.
and I was sort of thinking of, and it sort of struck me that I was like finally doing something. I mean, not finally, but I realised that so many of my ideas in the past had not been related to what was sort of on my back doorstep. It was like, oh, what if I create, just silly ideas, trying to change the world somehow, or create something. But then I realised, oh, if I do this service, like I'm actually sort of qualified to speak on these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to this, I actually, this was last year, I sort of started making my own just supplements at home. It's just like making pre-workouts and that sort of thing. And just because I go to the gym and I knew what I wanted, and so I put it in bottles and I put my labels on it and everything, mostly just for sort of personal use. And I actually, it's just a really good experience, doing the whole businessy thing, like, oh, here's my brand, and that sort of thing.
You see, not everybody thinks like that, though, Sam.
Right.
Not everybody would have, had the wherewithal or even had the idea in the first place.
Yeah.
But that is you create things.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
And I knew that wasn't going to be the sort of the hill I died on, but but I
good to know.
yeah. So it was only sort of recently after that I was doing a bit of reading on how you get things off the ground and how you start things, and I was just like, well, wait a minute, like this is something I'm skilled in, and this is something that I can't find. Googled my heart out trying to find similar sort of services, and I just couldn't find it. Often that kind of means there's a reason why you can't find it, but
no, that's right. You want to test that out too.
Exactly,
Is there a demand plus a lack?
Which there might not be, and I'll happily sort of be like, well, gave it a shot.
They're in the point of your surveys.
Yes,
well.
yeah, surveys and that sort of thing. So yeah, like just recently I got the website up and running, and I got sort of the Instagram up and running, which is at showreel_review on Instagram, or obviously www.showreelreview.com. And you can just kind of read about the things that I'm sort of trying to put out there, and the service that will be coming. But I also welcome anyone who's watching, if you've got any questions you'd like answered to send it in, because I really want more stuff to include. Like, I'll just keep writing until
I was going to say
the cows come home.
The book isn't finished yet.
No.
The last piece of the puzzle, of course, is when to finish.
When to finish,
when does
exactly.
it feel okay to finish, and how to finich. But you're obviously, it's still fertile ground for you, Sam, isn't it? It's still, you're still mining the content and mining just your experience over a period of, what are we talking now? Is this 10 years?
Yes.
Quite?
So it's been about 9-ish years actually in jobs, but then the sort of year or two before that I was doing freelance for sort of little companies around and stuff. So yeah, it's about sort of a 10-year journey at this point.
So you did that freelance gap there.
Yeah.
Any tips for people in that space?
Tips for people in that space? Well, I guess before that, I was just going to say, sort of diversifying your interests in the early days, I think, are really important.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that they just want to be this, and I think it's just kind of great to wrap your head around most of it before you sort of pigeonhole yourself. So in that regard, I kind of think find ways to sort of apply your skill sets to a whole lot of freelance jobs. You might not necessarily know that software, but if you know similar software, you can probably use it, or just volunteer yourself towards, not saying don't get paid for it, but kind of do the odd short movie or whatever, just to sort of get your skills up, and then people will remember you, and they'll be like, oh, you did that short film, and then we now have this project if you would like to work on this project. That's kind of freelance is a tricky one, because you're generally full freelance and you sort of have a reputation for working in freelance, or you're sort of like, oh, I'm in between contracts, I can pick up the odd job sort of thing. So I sort of do the occasional video editing in between. Sort of corporate videos and that sort of stuff, and you know, I'm big on my drone footage and stuff like that as well.
I've seen some of that on Facebook.
Right,
beautiful stuff.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
That's about, I guess, your eye is finely tuned, isn't it? That's one of your professional skills.
Yeah.
Talking about angle, you know.
Compositions.
Compositions. That's the word. That's the word. Yes.
Yeah, actually, layout is pretty much all about compositions. That's what you know, those departments I've worked in previously.
Yeah.
It's kind of all about compositions. It's about, you know, making sure you're not breaking the rules, and you're not, you know, as far as compositionally, and you're not crossing the line and doing those sorts of things, and making sure the conversation's easily read and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So yeah, it's kind of, if you go down that path, you'll probably also be good at taking photos and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. Well, movie-wise, what is the movie for you as a viewer that has really nailed it from the point of view of layout and such?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've thrown you a curly one.
You really have, yeah. As far as layout and stuff, that is a very good question.
Have you seen? I suppose we don't want to name this though. It's where they got it so wrong that it hinders the story, because it is all about supporting the story. Isn't it?
Yeah, it totally is. And I'm sure that, you know, there's a lot of, you won't really name things, but you know, there's a lot of people
and they're
that
probably
sort of,
the ones that we don't keep seeing year after year after year. You know, your Toy Stories and your Monsters Inc.
Oh, I love those films.
Where they're just so spot on in every regard that it's quite miraculous when you think of all of the moving parts involved in putting these films together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all of the people involved and all of the hours that go into it, and it's just incredible to think that they actually make a profit. Yeah,
actually all those Pixar films growing up were an absolute, like, I want to work on that. Like, how do I work on that? You know,
almost the best thing about having a kid. For me, was being exposed to this material that I wouldn't have been. I'd have been too up myself to go see Monsters Inc. at the movie, but I was just so cock-a-hoop. I reckon I've watched it about 8 times.
It's great, isn't it?
And, you know, all the characters in it, I was in workplaces where there was a Roz.
Yeah.
And there was, what was the real kind of one? The one.
Oh, Randall.
Potts, was it Randall?
Oh, I can't remember his last name.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Every workplace had one of those. But that's it too. That's about being able to capture the humanity.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that when you watch those films, everyone is portrayed in a way that they've all got their own little, they've all got their shtick or their, their own sort of humour. Or absolutely. That's right. So I remember watching those films and being like, I really want to watch that. My parents were the same. You know, they probably wouldn't have had a reason to sort of watch those films. And unless we were there, but they love them. Yeah, they love them.
And so, will you be in your business? Do you think you'll be working on any of those kind of films coming up? Is that something you'll be available to do anymore, or is it that you're focusing more on this education aspect of what you do?
At the moment, I'm sort of trying to get this off the ground, and I'm just kind of sort of testing the water, just seeing if there's an audience, seeing if there is anyone interested. You know, at the moment. She moved to the Gold Coast in a couple of weeks, so I will be interested to sort of go up there, scope it out, you know, see if there is work on, see if there are colleges that need a hand and that sort of stuff. I think I'll definitely keep doing it while I can. And then if it gets to a point where I can't, well, it's kind of a good problem to have for a while.
Good problem to have, absolutely, because this opens you to a worldwide audience as well, doesn't it? You're just making yourself and your experience that much more accessible.
Exactly.
Through the way that you do it. It's great.
So here we go.
All right. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, Well, I hope at least one person's bought my book by then.
Oh, Sam.
Once it comes out and all that.
I'm sure I'll probably buy it, and I guess
My mum will buy it.
But, oh my God, yeah, don't you worry about this. You talk to me about how to get your book bought if you've got any questions
Great.
about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
We'll do. In 5 years, I would actually like to do a bit of an overseas stint, working overseas. Because there are there's great companies here and in Australia, but there's so much out there.
Well, as close as New Zealand, in fact, the weather workshops.
Yeah, I've got friends over there.
Yeah, amazingly creative little country, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've only been there once, but I absolutely loved it in New Zealand. Yeah.
You'd get some footage off your drone over
Oh,
there.
yeah, for sure.
But why did I... Now I've lost my train of thought about why I even asked that question. That's right, the where will you be in 5 years?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and what I would say in terms of getting the book out there, getting it in front of people, don't be a modest, hero.
Yes.
Don't be modest about this. It's not, and I used to be sort of like, I don't want to be in people's faces. I don't want to bother anybody.
Yeah.
And then somebody put it to me, and I was sort of like, well, what right do I have to call myself an expert in that kind of thing? Well, it's what right do you have not to share this with all of the people who need to hear it?
Exactly. Because, you live, you die, don't you? And then, it's only what you've sort of done in that time that you kind of...
And what's pulled you to write the book is the whole point of all of the effort that you're putting in now is just that natural inclination to help other people.
Yeah.
To help the Sams who are 18, 16, 20.
Exactly.
Whatever, to help those people.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a lot of it was just sort of me jotting down my thought process, because it's sort of, you always tell people what you do for a living, and they're like, how did you get into that? And so often I sort of stop and I'm like, how did I get into that? And sort of retrace the steps. And I was kind of like, there's some, there's a bit of a story there. There's some information there. Or if you were so inclined to head down a similar path.
Yeah. Oh no, the how is really important. Breaking it down and actually explaining the stuff that you might not even realise needs to be explained.
Yeah,
but
totally.
It actually does. It's second nature to you now. But so many organisations, to just go bigger picture for a minute, leave themselves so vulnerable from a risk management point of view that they've invested in people. Let's say, you're working in an organisation and you leave. And there is nobody else who knows what you do.
Yes,
and it's not just sit down and push this button and do this and do that. That's a huge risk to an organisation.
Yeah, actually, I remember speaking to...
It's another thing you could do for places like Animal Logic or wherever, and I'm not saying that they're vulnerable in this regard, but places will be.
Yeah, that was the other sort of thing that got me interested in jotting it down is I've had this weird enjoyment all my life of sort of writing instructions on how to do things. I'd often work at places and I'd use tools that were specific to those offices, and I sort of go, there's no documentation, and then sort of my spare time I just sort of find myself, and then you click on this and you do that. And I sort of always loved that from school, both creative writing and sort of writing instructions, like guiding someone through things. And so I was like, this makes perfect sense to head down this path, to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and to bring it right back now to the name of your company, showreelreview.com.
Yep.
So you will also review people's showreels.
Yes,
And tell me, what does a good showreel look like? What's got to be in that?
So, a good showreel, there's lots of things that sort of encompass a good showreel. You've got to sort of look at it from which department the person is sort of trying to get into. So, if they're trying to be an animator and their animation is lackluster or not following the sort of animation principles that people are looking for, then it will kind of get sort of shafted. Or if it's too long, because obviously.
What's the length?
Recruiters. So, I think the general rule of thumb is probably between like a minute and no longer than sort of 2 or 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they got to be powerful minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to say you can't get away with different to that, but it's sort of just what I found.
So I guess it's a matter of doing a little bit of research of the companies that you're applying to as well. You know,
exactly.
be really tailored about this. I get this problem also with people that I show people how to get publicity for their book. You know, I came out the other end of writing my first book, and I'm kind of now what? And I worked my way through how to get, you know, significant bits of publicity, because the other thing about this too is that the media outlets that you're contacting, they're actually desperate for content. So again, don't be the you know, the quiet hero who can answer their questions and help them with their problems. But the point of the matter is that people I help can be lazy and can think that this press release and this email and this phone approach to ringing them back is going to be the right one for all of the outlets.
Oh, exactly.
Not the case. Tailor the bejesus out of your material,
definitely.
so that you hit the nail on the head.
Get your message across early. One of the things I sort of speak about in my book is you obviously want your best work first, but you also want your best work to be the last thing they finish on. And that's kind of the sort of rule that, you know, that's kind of what I try and go by. Technically, you want all your work to be fantastic, but you know, you'll have personal preferences or whatever. So first and last, definitely, and then great in the middle as well. Like if you don't think it's great, then I mean, you know, have things that you think are great.
Absolutely. And do you have music in the background, or
you can, and that's a whole.
Talking, or what's?
No, it's normally music, but
oh, that's a whole. Then what kind
it's
of
a whole
music?
Exactly.
Wow.
You know,
this
another
is
thing
all branding too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's very,
very
involved.
And I think we've all made the mistake of putting, you know, what isn't the most appropriate music in a show reel, because often you say, oh, you know, I'm really into like metal at this point, so I'll put like some heavy metal in the background. Sounds awesome, and then you're like, well, you know, and also the whole royalty free thing. You know,
is this all in your book?
Yes.
Yay! Wow.
Yeah. So,
the legal
exactly.
implications of these decisions.
I think I've just got a heading that's just like, don't get sued. You know,
don't get sued. There's a chapter.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you know,
how not to get sued.
As much as you want to put your own music in, it's probably not going to your own taste of music in. It's probably not going to be the most appropriate for the job, and also you don't have the rights to it. You know, so YouTube nowadays has a massive royalty-free library that you can choose music from. Not saying it's going to be great, because often some of the better ones have been used over and over again. But there are plenty of sites out there now that you can purchase tracks from, and you know, that sort of thing. If you know someone that creates music and you do a sort of bargain with them or something. Because you don't want to be you don't want copyright complaints.
No. So if you were paying somebody to put a show reel together for you, what would you expect to pay?
That's actually not
because
something.
For somebody, it's not easy for them to do themselves.
Yeah, actually, that's.
You've never looked into that.
I haven't looked into that. Yeah.
Put it in your book, I reckon.
Yeah, because that is an option. I know that like acting show reels, they often do that because they've just, you know, people have filmed them and then like, well, you know, video editing is so far from what I do, and they just pay an agency or whatever, and they put it together. But in these sorts of industries, I find, most of the time it's just the person who's created the work putting it together, because they generally have.
Oh, they have the skills.
Yeah, not to say video editing's like a lot of these departments, but it's stuff, you know, they've grown up doing that kind of thing, so they're just like, oh well, I'll do it. You know, it's mine. I'll sort of take the reins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is wonderful, this book of yours.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, I was really happy you enjoyed reading the draft. The special draft I've got here. How long do you reckon
you've spent on it already?
It's been sort of probably 6 months or so, probably more. Because I had the idea for it all sort of early this year, and I've just sort of been chopping away at it since. But not any sort of haven't just been like working every single night
No,
on
no,
it or
no,
anything,
of
because
course,
I've
yeah.
had jobs to go to and stuff, but it's kind of like, as it sits there, I come up with more content and I talk to more people and I get more information to put into it.
That's a nice way to go about
Yeah,
it.
so I'm reluctant to sort of rush it out there before people have had their say, or you know, students who are interested in it have their questions asked. So yeah, I'm sort of not in a huge hurry to put it out, but also I would like to sort of get exposure relatively soon.
Well, that's it. You want it out there.
Yeah.
You want, especially as people are going into, you know, we're coming into next year. It's a kind of a milestone, isn't it? And if you've got people then thinking, or they've already enrolled, or for whatever reason they haven't, but they want to prepare themselves to enrol in the not too distant future. They might be taking a gap year or whatever. You really want to be able to hit those people when they're ready.
Definitely.
And when they're needy.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing I've found too is, you know, with Instagram and stuff and promoted posts, you can kind of see the audience that it's not the be all and end all of who's going to read or buy it or, you know, be interested in your service, but you kind of get a vague idea, the demographic, you know, just even locally in Australia, which states are sort of higher up in the interest level.
Share a little bit about that, because that is interesting.
So far, just on the Instagram posts, I've just sort of found that Victoria and New South Wales are the sort of two heavy hitters in people that are interested in that kind of thing. And then, it sort of shuffles down from there, which I guess is just, you know, the amount of, it's a combination of culture, but then also the amount of people in each state. It's not.
There's that, and then there's where the industry is as well, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
But that's a numbers game. You're absolutely right. This is where most of the people live.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, that's been really
and
interesting.
Ages were interesting as well, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
In
so,
some regards, at least.
Yeah, so big in the sort of 18 to 25 bracket.
Not surprisingly, that one.
And then, you know, it sort of, you know, shuffles down. But then you get these sort of weird blips where it's like, you know, the ages 55 and 65 are kind of interested in it, you know.
Got a bit of freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, perhaps got a bit of means.
Start the career again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, it's. I think it's a growth industry, this whole kind of, you know, people in their 50s having enough freedom to maybe take a risk.
Definitely,
to maybe come out and start a business. And yeah, it's
I love seeing it, you know, when the people that have had a career and sort of keen for a change sort of try and do something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's very admirable, I think.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. It brings me back to Gary Vee again. The very first one of his videos, he's prolific. His YouTube is full of Gary Vee videos, but the first one I ever saw, and I don't know whether it found me on Facebook with all the pixels that they put in the back end, where they, you know, they know who you are, they know what you're doing, and it was about specifically this, because I found myself at the age of 52 having to set up a business.
Yeah.
You know, and so somehow, I don't know if Facebook knew this, it probably knew that.
Yeah.
And then somehow in front of me comes a video of Gary Vee going, and you know, you older people who are sitting there, don't be thinking that this isn't your time, that this is not possible for you to build a business, not possible for you, it's more possible for you than ever before.
You got more experience than anyone.
Well, there's that, but there's the whole, you know, back in the day you couldn't. You didn't have a device in your hand. And again, I'm talking about Gary Vee, he's got in my head. He's in my head. Anyway, he held up his mobile phone and said, you know, the amount of power in this device, the amount of coverage that you can now get for your message with this device would have, you know, he talks about, you would have had to have a printing press, you would have had to have your own studio, you would have had to have, you know, God knows what in the back end. And there it is in your hand.
Yeah.
And so, you know, someone like me had to get completely out of their comfort zone. Someone who came from an organisation where they had several people in the media department who ran social media, who knew about Facebook ads, who knew about this, who knew about that. It was just little old me. And I had to suck it up. I just had to suck it up and learn it. And like you said, what a hell of a resource is YouTube in terms of how to do this and that and the other. You know, and I met some great people along the way who helped me big time as well. I met some people along the way who ripped me off blind too.
Yeah,
but that's
you win some, you lose some.
That you win some, you lose some. But as you know, Gary Vee will say, don't live in excuse land.
Yeah, totally.
And definitely don't live in unpacking your bags in a sad sack and I'm not going to make this work.
Yeah,
you know, you're going to have, if that mindset stuff kicks in, that's all right. Just don't decide to unpack and live there.
Totally.
The classics,
and I mean, even if you're not successful, like surely that journey is, you know, you appreciate that more than anything, right?
No greater a teacher than what we might call failure or that we might call hard times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, as we start to wrap up now, Sam, what is it that you wish you heard when you were a young guy? What did you need to hear back then?
I would say, I think a big one is people often get upset when they get rejected from roles, and I think just don't take it personally and sort of persevere. You know, just because you're not right for one job doesn't mean you're not right. You know, it could be a plethora of things.
That's right. Yes.
So keep at it. Fantastic. Well, one more time, how do people find you? And especially if they have any feedback or questions for you, Sam. Website again is www.showreelreview.com, and if you go there, you'll be prompted with a sort of sign up page. I'm not going to spam you with ads or anything. It's just sort of more of a way that you know when I'm launched and when I'm ready. And you can also email me at info@showreelreview.com with any questions or comments or whatever you like. And then Instagram at @showreel_review.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for coming on, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening and watching, everyone. It's been another great hour with you today. And join us again, 9 o'clock Sydney time next Tuesday on Bondi Radio for your creative journey.